that being said, let's get started. I'm going to turn it over to Brindy to tell us all things co-hosting.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. Yes, I'm so excited to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And if you can give me a thumbs up in the chat, then I know we are good to go. Does that look good for everybody? Awesome. So yes, I'm so glad to be here. I was so excited when Minoan reached out to ask me to do this. I've actually hosted well over 200 webinars. I host an intro to hosting webinar for Airbnb, but I'm always talking to complete newbies, which I absolutely love. But I know this group is a little more experienced. And so I was really excited to talk to this group and talk about co-hosting. So I've actually never presented about co-hosting. If some of you follow me on Instagram, I share tidbits here and there. But this was a lot of fun to put together because this is the first time that I'm really taking all that I've learned the last 8 years of my business and turned it into something that I can share and talk about. So that feels really exciting. I said something on my Instagram that you can't see the label through the jar, and that's how I felt the last couple of years, where I've been building this business, but at times it's kind of hard to talk about because I'm in the middle of building it, and I feel like just these last 6 to 12 months. I've gotten a lot more clarity, and our business and our team is in a really good spot, which is just really fun to be able to share and talk about it. So thank you all for being here. And also, if you are a newbie, you are totally welcome. This is truly for everyone. I'm just excited to be talking about a more focused subject and something that I truly am an expert in after several years being a co-host. So today's agenda is the following. I'll start by just sharing a little bit about my own hosting story, how I got started, how I built my business, some of the big milestones. The way I structured this presentation is just talking through what I would do if I was building my business from scratch. So it turned out to be 6 steps. So I will go through the 6 steps that I would take if I was building this all from scratch. I truly do want to hear your questions. I think we're going to have enough time at the end for some questions. So drop those in the chat, and Taylor and the team will help sort through those. So feel free to ask anything that comes to mind. I'm going to share my toolbox, what we use, what I would recommend, and then also how to keep in touch. So I do have these slides available to share afterward. And so at the end of the presentation, I'll share how you can get me your email. And if you'd like these slides, I can get those over to you. And then we'll do a Q&A. All right, so without further ado, a little bit about me and my hosting story. So I launched my own home on Airbnb back in 2017, only because I needed some extra cash. So I'd love to see in the chat how many of you got started the same way because you needed extra cash and you listed your own home on Airbnb. Yep, Janice, yep, I think it's a common story. That's how a lot of us get started. You know, I had spent some time designing my home and making it cute, which made it a lot easier to go ahead and put it on Airbnb, but it was 100% for the money. And honestly, it came as a surprise just how much I loved this industry. Right off the bat, I really fell in love with hosting people from all over the world, and I wanted to do more of it. So at the time, I was working full time for a tech startup, and I was just doing this as a side hustle. So this was back in, so 2017 was when I listed my own home. And then in 2018 was when I wanted to grow. I was in no position to buy another investment property. So somehow I needed to grow and start making more money without buying another home to rent out. And so I started co-hosting before there was really even a word for co-hosting, which actually made it really hard to sell my services because there wasn't a term, there wasn't a word, there was a lot of confusion. If you've just gotten into this the last couple of years, it's a lot more defined. But back then, it was really hard for people to talk about what we did, and it was tough for me. It literally took me 2 years to come up with a pretty simple elevator pitch. So that's something that you guys can save yourselves if you're just getting started. Is you can save yourself that because now it's a lot easier to talk about. And then by 2020, I had 2 homes that I was co-hosting. I had 4 on the way, and that's when I decided to take the leap and quit my full-time job. I think my friends and family thought I was completely crazy. They've since told me that they almost did an intervention thinking I had completely lost it, but I was pretty confident that I could make this work. if I just freed up my time a little bit and took that leap. So in January of 2020, I quit my full-time job. I had these two co-hosting homes, four on the way. And I was barely ramping up my business. I know now we know how precarious of a time January 2020 was, but of course I had no idea. And then in March of 2020 was when that really crazy thing happened in the middle of COVID when Airbnb just canceled a bunch of bookings. And in a single day, I lost $45,000 of bookings. Basically, every single booking that gave me the confidence to quit my job back in January was gone in a single day. And while it might feel like that would be the worst day of my life, I actually remember standing in my living room just looking at all the cancellations going through and feeling this like odd sense of relief that was like, well, at least now if my business fails, I'll have a really good excuse. And so that was actually like a very peaceful moment, but thankfully it did not fail. And for those of you who have been at it a few years, you know that 2020, 2021 were wonderful years. It was the gold rush of Airbnb. And then 2022 was, at least for me, and I know for some other hosts, was when things actually got really tough. The market settled, bookings slowed down, what had worked before stopped working. And this is when I really had to start rethinking my business, decide if it was even something I still wanted to do, and just do it differently because I was on the brink of burnout, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And what had once been my dream, what I had quit my job to do, was no longer feeling like the dream. I was feeling super burdened by it, and it was just really tough. And so up until that point, I was a one-woman show. I had a couple people helping me out here and there, and of course cleaners, but up until 2022, I was the only one doing everything. And then finally, on the brink of total burnout, I hired my first part-time employee in October of 2022. We'll talk more about that later. That was a huge turning point for my business to get a little bit of help. And that went a long way. And then a little bit later, about a year later, I hired a accountant in June of 2023, which was another huge turning point, helped me out a ton. We'll talk more about that as well. I hired an accountant well before I thought that I could afford it. It was one of the best moves I made for my business. She actually ended up acting as my CFO, helping me make some really big strategy decisions that I don't think I could have done alone. And then eventually I brought on two more people to help with guest messaging. As of 6 months ago, we are a team of four. We manage 28 homes all over Arizona. And like I said, I finally feel like we can see the label. We're on the outside of the jar. We can see the label on the jar. We know what we're doing, and now it's just all about refining our processes and building a business that we all just love working for and being a part of. So, long intro, but it does fit well with today's topic, which is what I would do if I was doing it all from scratch. Because I think if I was doing it all from scratch, I could save myself some headache and definitely fast forward a couple of years that I spent, stumbling around a little bit. So, step one, and I know I'm speaking to the choir a little bit here, but we need to start at the very foundational level. You absolutely need hosting experience to get started. I do have a lot of folks that join my Airbnb Intro to Hosting webinar who are brand new. They haven't hosted any homes at all yet, and they want to get started co-hosting. And unfortunately, my bad news for them is that you really need experience before you can start advertising your co-hosting experience. There is truly no way around it. Of course, everything I'm sharing today is my own personal opinion based off of my experience, but I really think it's important to have solid hosting experience before you start advertising your services to anyone else. So the good news is there's some creative ways to do that. You don't necessarily need to go out and buy an investment property, although that's certainly an option. But you can also just list your own home. That's how I got started. And that home was actually my primary residence, and I was scrappy. I would rent it out while I'd go stay with my parents who lived an hour and a half away. I'd go stay with a friend here and there, or just while I traveled. And so that was a great way to start building my Airbnb profile, getting those reviews and getting that experience. I also did some rental arbitrage when I first started. And the thing I'll say about that is you just have to be so careful with rental arbitrage because it is very risky. Unlike when you own a home, if you are renting a home, you have to pay the rent and the utilities no matter what. And you're not vesting in any type of investment, so you got to know for a fact that that home is going to earn some profit. So very risky. But what I will say about rental arbitrage, all in all, I was profitable on my rental arbitrage deals, but only barely. It barely paid for the amount of hours that I was putting in. But looking back, what that did more than anything is it did give me some experience before I was in a position to really advertise my services to other hosts. And so I do think rental arbitrage, if you look at it as a way to get experience rather than a way to make money, you still need to make sure that it's going to be profitable, but that can be a good strategy. And of course, if you can find a friend or a family member who will trust you without that experience, who you can be totally upfront and honest with that I am new and I am learning. I would love to manage your home. Maybe you can give them a discount. And I would say this would be the only time in your business that you should really be giving anybody a discount on your management services. But maybe when you're first starting, you could, manage for half the cost that you'd like to later on just to get some of that experience under your belt. All right, next up, you need to identify your ideal client avatar. And I know probably in this group, you've heard a lot of chat about how important it is to identify your ideal guest avatar. And so need to do the same thing as a co-host is really get clear on the type of homeowner that you want to host for. And what types of homes do you want to host? And what is the gross revenue that a home needs to be generating for the home to even interest you? And honestly, I could have saved myself so much headache if I had gotten clear on this a lot sooner. I bounced around a lot. I said yes to a lot of homes that, looking back, really weren't a fit and added far more stress than anything else. And I get it because, especially when you're first starting and you don't feel like you have a ton of leads, you just want to say yes to any opportunity that comes your way. And I truly do regret saying yes to some of the things that I said yes to in the early days, and I think it would have served me a lot better, and I could have fast forwarded some of my progress had I said no to a few more and waited to say yes to the right homes. And so really get clear on that, and more than anything, trust your gut. You know when it's a good deal, when it's a good home, when it's somebody that you want to work with. Say yes to those and say no to everything else. And trust that saying no to one home isn't saying no to everything. The right opportunity will come. So of course, the classic, when one door closes, another one opens. So that's still something I'm trying to do a better job on. I still, want to say yes to things that I know aren't quite a fit. That's where my team helps me out nowadays, keeping me on track, making sure I don't say yes to things that we know as a team is not a fit. So for us, our criteria is we need to know that the home is going to gross 72,000 in gross annual revenue, which means about 1,200 a month. For us, we charge 20% management of gross earnings. So that means about 1,200 a month. Not all of our homes in our portfolio are at that level, and that's okay. But we know that moving forward, those are the only types of homes that really interest us and that really make sense for our team to take on. We need homes to be located in one of our 3 Arizona service areas. This was another one that I cheated on a lot early on when it was like, oh, you've got a home, in the mountains of California and I live in Arizona. Sure, like let me take a look at it. And would say yes to things that were sort of everywhere and anywhere. And for me in my business, I think that we do a lot. I love when we can be the expert on our market, when I can speak very intelligently about the seasonality, high season, low season, when I know we've got a team of people that we can have there at the home in a moment's notice if we need. That gives me a lot of confidence running my business. And so moving forward, we will only take on homes that are located in one of those 3 Arizona service areas. And as tempting as it is to expand outside of that, we're not doing it. So we're just staying in those 3 service areas and being very, very disciplined about that. Next up, we need homes that are thoughtfully designed and furnished. We don't have we're not one of like the big bachelorette themed houses. We would take one of those on, but that's not what we need for a home to make sense for us. We just need a home to be thoughtfully designed and furnished. And so I do require to see the home in person before we take on a home. I ask for photos before I take time out of my day to go show up and go somewhere in person. But I want to make sure that the home has potential. And if it's not quite there, I'll let them know that, we need it at this certain standard before it would fit into our portfolio. And then I'll share references on how they can, who they can work with if they want to get it on that level, if they still do want to work with us. Joanne, what are our three service areas? So we are in Phoenix metro area, which includes Scottsdale, Tempe, Mesa, all of that. Sedona, Cottonwood area, and then also Pine and Strawberry, Arizona, up near Payson. Um, and then let's see. And then, yes, we need to make sure that the owner is only using the home less than 3 weeks a year and never during busy season. So I actually love having owners who spend some time in the home. I think owners who spend a little bit of time in the home are more likely to invest in the amenities and furnishings that make the home really comfortable for guests, help earn those 5-star reviews. But we do not want owners staying in the home during busy season, and we define that, and that's going to be a little bit different for everybody. But for us, February and March, we need the home full time, no exception. Uh, if the owner wants to come during the summer for a couple of weeks, no problem. So right around 3 weeks is, if it's more than that, that does start to interrupt what we're trying to do. And, we would definitely not take on a home that the owner's trying to spend a couple of months a year in. It needs to be a full-time short-term rental first. All right, next up, you need leads. So you need leads for owners who you can manage for. And I know from my Instagram DMs and the questions that I hear most often, I know this is where most hosts struggle the very most. And honestly, where a lot of people give up too early. I totally get it. I have, in the recent past, I've felt like, oh shoot, where where am I going to get my next couple of clients from? It can feel very daunting. But it's important to just do what you can and, not get too lost in that space where you just feel like you don't know what to do. And so all I can tell you is that what has worked for me, and as annoying as it is to hear, because I know this was very annoying when people would tell me this back in the day, the answer is network, network, network. Your network truly is everything. This is what will create your clients. And it's not, I think what I used to think what network was to go show up and close a deal. Go show up at the meetup, meet an owner and close the deal and start managing for them the next week. And that is not how it works. And if that's what your expectation is, then you will be let down and you will think that you're failing. But what it really looks like is you go to the meetup, you meet a few people, you get their numbers, you chat, you go to another meetup, you say hi to them again, you reintroduce yourself, you chat a little bit more, and then a year later, they call you up and say, hey, I remember meeting you a few months ago. We have a home ready to list. Do you want to manage it? Or they go and tell their friend or tell a colleague, and then they're the ones calling you up. And so important to understand that, you're not going to these meetups to close deals. I recommend that you don't do that. You might scare off more people than you're selling. But just putting yourself in front of people makes a big difference. And I see that question, what sort of meetups? I'll get into that. Great question. So I think to give you an idea, well, yeah. So first, the types of meetups that have been successful for me are local investor meetups. And I actually encourage you to find meetups that are not short-term rental focused. It's best if you can show up somewhere and be the only short-term rental person in the room. And the best place for that I found are real estate investment groups. Usually it's a lot of like fun conversation anyway. Here in Phoenix, there's a women's real estate investment group that I go to most every month. So there's a lot of groups like that, meetup.com. You can just go on and find these types of meetups. And just show up and talk about your business. Bring a couple of business cards. But once again, you don't have to be super salesy at these meetups. Just show up, be yourself, talk to as many people as you can, introduce yourself to as many people as you can, and keep showing up and try to make a couple of friends. Try to have a couple of people that when you show up the next week, you say hi and you remember their name. So, find a couple of people that you really want to focus on remembering. And yeah, build those genuine relationships. I'll talk about it here in just a second, but some of my best partnerships have been with real estate agents. Not every real estate agent is a good referral partner, but some of them, if you just find, a couple that tend to sell to people who are investing in short-term rentals, these can be super good lead generators and just people who are good connectors. So to give you an idea of where some of my clients have come from, my very first client came from Airbnb's experienced co-host program. Airbnb launched this for a hot minute back in 2017, and they quickly got rid of it. Now there is a very similar platform, the Co-host Network, which was their relaunch that they did last year. But this is how I found my first client. And, I do recommend joining the co-host network. There's no reason not to. It's a great place to, and even just the exercise of putting together your co-host platform is a really good exercise to get really clear on what your services are and what your ideal client avatar is. So even just that exercise alone is really valuable. But there's no reason not to put yourself on the network. I think at this point, anybody can join. I don't have the link in front of me, but happy to share that if you to join the network. And what I'll say about that is, truthfully, since they relaunched the program, I have not found any leads of my own. I get maybe 4 or 5 leads a week, and none of them have been leads that I'm interested in. There is a lot of spam, and most of the leads are homes that I'm just not interested in managing. But the thing is you really only need one for it to make sense. And so just get a canned message that you can copy and paste for the ones that aren't a fit. Don't spend any time or energy on the leads that don't make sense, and just wait for, a couple that do make sense and go with that. And so I would say with the co-host platform, just be really clear on what you're looking for and be firm. Just because you're getting your 10th person reaching out asking if you'll do a 15% management rate instead of 20%, don't let that feel like the thing that you have to do to be successful. That's just one place where one set of leads are coming from. Be firm in what your offering is, and don't feel like you have to cower down to what the noise is saying. Next up, I've had a couple of owners find me on Instagram. And actually, the first client who found me on Instagram was when I had less than 1,000 followers. So you don't need a big following on Instagram to get those clients. In fact, I'd even say, I got married recently, and I noticed when I was looking for a wedding photographer, I noticed myself wanting to reach out to the people who have the smaller following because I felt like their prices would be a little bit more fair. And as long as they had the portfolio to back up the types of photos that I wanted, I was interested. And so I thought that was interesting. And I wondered, how does that apply? Like, I think sometimes we get really caught up in Instagram world thinking that we need to have, 10, 20,000 followers to get any business or to get any leads through Instagram. And that's just not true. And sometimes that smaller, more engaged following is actually more valuable. I will say the trick to Instagram is you need to be clear about what you're looking for. It can be really easy to think that you're showing up on Instagram, to think that you're posting, and then you go back and look over your posts, and not once have you said, I'm looking for a co-host client to manage for, or our team is taking on a new home. And so I worked with an Instagram coach a year or so ago, and that's one of the things she said to me is I was like, I'd like to be getting more leads through Instagram. And she's like, well, have you talked about that on Instagram? Nope, I hadn't. And so once I did a focused campaign for 1 week where every single day I showed up on stories and said our team is looking for, more homes. I talked on stories. I did a couple of posts. And in that week alone, I got like 4 or 5 people reaching out, and 2 of those ended up turning into clients. And so just, actually saying what you need and not expecting people to read your mind, that goes a long way. Another client, the first client that I mentioned who I found on the co-host platform, he referred me to his business partner, and that actually turned into 2 homes. And so, the clients that you do start managing for, they turn into your best referral partners, and it really snowballs. And so absolutely those first couple of clients are the hardest to get. After that, it really, really snowballs. And then I have to share this one. It's a little crazy, and I don't expect you to follow, but just goes to show what networking can look like. So one of our clients who we manage for, the way that I met them is that very first client I met through the co-host program referred me to his business partner, referred me to his contractor, who referred me to their sister-in-law, who I went to go see her house and we were going to take it on. She actually didn't end up hiring me. Her house was gorgeous and I was super bummed because she didn't end up hiring me. They decided to self-manage. I was really bummed about it. But while I was at the house, I met the handyman. And the handyman referred me to his friend, who referred me to her friend, who referred me to an owner whose cabin we now manage. And so that's 7 connections deep, more than the 6 connections that supposedly were all connected. We've now been managing that cabin for 3 years. And that's just wild to me. I mean, how could I have ever expected that? And so it just goes to show, like, wherever you go, show up and talk about your business, whether it's the handyman, the cleaning person, whoever it is, talk about your business. You never know where that's going to lead. A real estate agent who I bought a short-term rental with introduced me to their family friend who we still manage for today. Another real estate agent who I met through volunteering with AZRT, which is Arizona's advocacy group, which if you're in Arizona, you need to be an AZRT member, an AZRT member. It's a really, really important group to be a part of outside of leads. It's just really important to be involved in advocacy, and Arizona has a really strong group, and we're building a lot of momentum. Uh, but what's unexpected about that is just by volunteering and showing up to AZRT meetups, being volunteering, showing up on Zoom calls to help organize different activities, I've met people who have turned into leads. And so the main one is I met a real estate agent who ended up introducing me to one owner, who introduced me to another owner, who introduced me to another owner. That turned into 3 homes there alone. So getting involved in advocacy groups, meeting local hosts there, meeting local real estate agents goes a long way. So, our most recent home was from a local real estate investor who I met at one of those investing meetups. So those are all places to go. I also always make sure that I am participating in some type of personal or business development group. And so right now I'm in a group called Elevate. You've never heard of it because it's a super small group that's very local here in Scottsdale. And so there's a group of us that meet every month. It's mostly real estate professionals. I'm the only short-term rental person in the room. It's very focused on mindset, so it's not even very businessy. I use it as a business expense, but it's really focused on mindset. It helps me a lot just as a person. And also it's a great place to meet people who can turn into potential leads. And so an easy one, if you don't know where to start, is BNI. BNI is a national networking group, and that's a great place to start. They're everywhere. But I will say there's more fun groups out there. So BNI is a great place to start. But if you want a more engaged group, you can find that too. Devin, Instagram is how I found you. It's true. Devin found one of our favorite owner clients who we manage for, and she found us on Instagram during that campaign when I was very clear saying I'm looking for homes to manage for. So, and now you're here. Great to see you, Devin. And then Arizonans for oh, that's funny. No, we love you, Devin. Arizonans for Responsible Tourism, find your local advocacy group. And if you need help finding your local advocacy group, let me know, because I mean, it's important for so many reasons. It's a whole other topic, but it is also a great place to meet owners who you can manage for. All right, moving on. Let's see. Next up, you need to build a team. And the reality is, when you're in this phase, you might not yet be in the position that you can actually hire the team, but you still need to be thinking like you are a team. So maybe you are the whole team, but start getting clear on the different positions that you have and the different hats that you're wearing. And one of the most helpful exercises that I did was prompted by a coaching group that I was in at the time. And the assignment was to create job descriptions. And my response was, well, I don't have any employees. So what job descriptions am I going to make? And the answer was, write a job description for yourself for what your dream job is, and then write a job description for what your dream team is. And truly one of the best things I did. I spent an entire day on it, and it was one of those days where I was like, oh, I'm wasting my time. I should be doing all these other things. No, it was one of the most valuable things I did, was to write those job descriptions and just get really clear on the job that I wanted and what I knew I needed help with. So that's something. And actually, in my follow-up email, I will share a template for that, one of those first job descriptions that I ended up hiring for, to get you started, and just show that, you don't need to overthink this. Like, just think through what those tasks are, what those systems are, and put that together. So what our team structure looks like today, and that is a photo of our team. It makes me so happy every time I see all of our team's faces all together. I spent so long doing this all alone, and I can tell you it is so much more fun. And so much easier when you have a team to support you. And so, truly, like, it's a whole different world having a team these last couple of years versus the days when I was doing it all alone. So, if you're doing it all alone right now, just know that it gets better once you start getting those people to help you out. So, the way that our team structure looks like, I am a very involved owner, so I do work this like a full-time job. I do spend quite a bit of time doing like the stuff that like the affiliate marketing and partnerships. And so, I feel like about part-time I'm doing true property management, and the rest of the time I'm doing stuff like this. But more or less, I'm in this business full time. I really take on our sales and onboarding, listing management, owner relationship, and strategy. And then we have Kylie, who was my first hire. She started with us full time, or sorry, she started with us part time back in October of 2022. And then in April, she joined us full time. And totally shifted my business once I got Kylie's help. She is our boots on the ground. She helps with owner management, guest messaging, clean. She's our cleaning team liaison. She helps with smart locks and security cameras, scheduling, landscaping, handyman coordinator, handles all of our guest reviews, makes sure that we get reviews out to our guests, make sure that we don't get reviews out to our bad guests or that we edit them first. She relieves responses. That's a really important piece of this business that I was falling through the cracks when I was doing it all alone. She does all of our monthly on-site property QA checks. You name it, she does it. We could not survive without Kylie, and I think she's on the call. So hi, Kylie, and thank you for all that you do. Next up, we have Julia. And Julia is our project manager who joined us part-time just little by little over the last year. I'll say with Kylie, when I hired Kylie, it was because I was in desperate need of help and I just knew I needed somebody to take some work off my plate. And when I hired Julia, I knew I needed a little bit of help, but the interesting thing about hiring Julia is she came in and really like found a place for herself in our business. And can't imagine not having her on the team now. She's our project manager. She really owns all of our tasks, making sure that things get done. Those are things that when you're boots on the ground running around, and if you're doing this now, you get it. If you're going to property after property after property, it's just hard to keep it all in your head and stay organized. And important tasks start falling through the cracks. And so you need somebody who's really owning the project management and making sure that we're all taking care of the really important things. So that's what Julia does. I'll talk a little bit more about what she does when I talk about our tools. And then last is Debbie. And Debbie's actually my mom, and it's been such a joy having my mom on the team. It was just one of the perfect fits. Turns out I get all of my excellent communication skills from my mother. I didn't have to train her for more than like 3 hours, and she was messaging people in exactly the tone and way that we needed to. And there was something, just she calls it her grand business, which I think is really sweet. And I love having her on the team. So she also helps us with some bookkeeping. And then in addition to that, we have an accountant. Our accountant does all of our end of month reconciliation for cleaning, handyman repairs. They send all of the invoices. They send the owners all of our end of month reports. She sends me a monthly profit and loss statement, which is so important. If you're not seeing your profit and loss every single month, start working toward a system that allows you to see that. This was something that I wish I would have done sooner. And actually, one of my best friends, she was our first accountant, and she had worked with restaurant groups in the past. And so she had a lot of really solid accounting experience that rolled over very nicely into our business. And she was telling me for a long time that I needed more accounting help in my business. And I was like, no, I can't really afford it. I'm not really making enough money for it to make sense. She's like, no, I think you really need it. Like, let me help get you started. And once she got in there, I mean, first of all, the business just grew because we were so much clear on what our money looked like and what our cash flow looked like. And we started making very strategic decisions. And more than anything, I think it just put enough space between me and my money where I stopped coming up with like a narrative around the cash flow that actually ended up working against me. So I don't know if this sounds familiar, but it'd be like when I was doing this all on my own and looking at my, I've always been pretty organized with my finances. So I've always been pretty clear on how much money we have and what our expenses are and what our income is. But every month, I'd look at how much money we made and I'd have a whole narrative around it. So it'd be something like, oh, we didn't make any money this month, but it's because I did this, this, and this. Or wow, we made money this month, but it doesn't really count because of this, this, this. And so doing both, like not being realistic about what my expenses were and creating a narrative around that, and then also not celebrating the wins when we actually had a really productive and high profit month. And so having an accountant come in and tell me that money story every month from an outsider view, from an objective perspective, I can't even tell you how helpful that's been. So, worth every penny if you have a good accountant and find somebody who really can be strategic. I really look at our accountant as also like a fractional CFO. We're not a big enough company to have a CFO, but to have an accountant who acts like a CFO, really helps. And one of the things that that accountant did for us early on is each month she was telling me, you're spending a lot of money on your property management software. And it actually frustrated me because I was like, well, it's our property management software. You're new to the business. You don't get it. We need this. And then each month she's saying again, these expenses are high. Like this is one of your biggest expenses. We were spending well over $1,000, and it was when we were a lot smaller on property management. And so every month she's saying this, and she said, what if you just reach out to the property management and ask for a discount now that you've grown a little bit, or could you shop around and find another property management system? Long story short, I finally, after like 6 months of her flagging this, saying we're spending a lot of money over here, only because of her prompting, I started shopping around for another property management system and I cut that expense. We're only paying a third of what we had spent before. And we've done a lot of other things like that that I just don't think I would have done on my own. And, looking back, it makes perfect sense, but it really did take somebody coming in saying, you need to trim this. To really, move me into action, and that goes a long way in a small business if you can cut some of those big expenses. All right, next up, and I see so many questions coming in, but and I am going to answer them, but I'm having a hard time keeping up with the presentation. So we will save some time for some of those. All right, step five, build your systems and choose your tools. So this is another one that could have literally saved me years of stumbling around. I remember like early days when people would be like, you need systems. I'm like, system, I got a system, guest book on Airbnb and I make money. Like that's my system. If that's your system, you might want to get a little more granular, a little more clear on what's happening behind the scenes to support that. And that's something that really truthfully is hard to do if you're a one woman or one man show. Once you have a team, you'll really start seeing like what those systems are. But even if you are doing this alone right now, get really curious about, what are the things that you're doing every day that maybe you're not seeing it as a system because you kind of just take it for granted. You're just doing it when you got to do it. But maybe with a little bit more curiosity and taking just a step back, looking at yourself, looking at what you're doing, you can start to identify the systems that are happening behind the scenes to make your business run. So another mistake that I made early on and still kind of unwinding from this mistake is signing up for every XYZ software based off of their, pie in the sky promise, thinking that I need all of this software to be successful and signing up for a lot of tools and software that quite frankly, I do not need. Now, the reality in this business is you do need some. This is a business where you absolutely need certain pieces of software and you need some tools to run this business. Absolutely. But you don't need it all. And so I love going to short-term rental conferences. And if that's not something that you've done yet, find one to go to because it's a lot of fun. It's fun to meet people, fun just to see what's out there. But don't do what I did and start just signing up for everything because you just don't need it. You don't need it all. Be really, really discerning in what you sign yourself up for and what you pay for. It takes a lot of time to ramp up with different products, and let alone, undoing all of that work, not to mention the monthly money that you're spending on things like that. So I'll tell you what our processes and systems are now, including the tools that we use. I did list, I think I really, that's pretty much everything we use. I think there's a couple of small tools that I use more on the coaching side of my business that I didn't include there, but it's from a property management perspective, that is a comprehensive list, along with what we pay, to just give you an idea of how much we're spending on 28 homes, what it looks like to do that. And so as far as our processes and systems now, we list on Vrbo, Airbnb, and our direct booking website. We use Hospitable as our management software. We switched to Hospitable about a year ago. I absolutely love it. It works really well for the team. I got a lot of feedback when I switched to Hospitable that, they weren't going to be able to do some of the things that my previous software could do. And it is true, there's a few gaps, but it does the important things really well. And the team really likes using it. They've got a mobile app that works really well, which I think for a small team, you really need a mobile app that works well, because you don't have a team on their computer all day. And so that's really important to us. We use Wheelhouse for pricing management. I've also used Price Labs before. They truly are like one and the same, very comparable. So if you have Price Labs, don't feel like you have to switch to Wheelhouse. I would recommend that you don't do that. But you definitely need to be using one of those pricing softwares, I would say. Next, we use Happy Guest for guest screening and verification for non-Airbnb bookings. We use Monday.com, which big shout out to Julia on the team, because she's the one who had that idea to get set up on Monday.com to handle all of our maintenance items and tasks. And this is working so well for us. So, we stumbled around a little bit. We tried some platforms that are more short-term rental focused to manage our maintenance tasks and our day-to-day things. And honestly, I just found them very clunky and expensive and just weren't that easy to use, even though they were like short-term rental focused. And so it was kind of cool. Julia came in without a lot of short-term rental background. She had just worked in a lot of other businesses, and she said, I've used Monday.com. It's worked great for me. What if I set this up for the team, and why don't we try it out? And so we've been doing that, and like all of us are just like breathing, because we have this really nice dashboard that makes it really clear what we need to do. So loving that. We use TouchStay for guest guides, super pretty, really clean, can be edited anytime. We were starting to get really worn out having to like reprint guest guides because something got updated or somebody got peanut butter all over it, whatever it was. It's really nice to be able to just update those guides remotely. I also love in TouchStay, they have a really nice way to recommend like restaurants. They have like this map that you can pin restaurants all over. It makes it super easy to share recommendations with guests. So I love that. And then we use Google Docs, which this might sound like kind of like a dumb system or like a little amateur, but I can tell you once again, I have tried other systems that we've paid for. I will say this system isn't perfect. We're still refining it, but it's the best that I've identified so far after trying a few systems that you pay for. But what we do is we have a separate Google Doc for each of our homes. We have a template with our house notes. We document everything there. So like, where's the breaker box? What's the pet policy? Who's our first handyman that we call? Do we have any special instructions for how to troubleshoot any of the appliances in the home? Like anything that could come in handy, we put in those Google Docs. We have a Google folder, and they're also linked on Monday.com. So we have a couple of ways that makes them really easy to access. This is working for us. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it's better than anything else. And I love that it's free. And so, don't overcomplicate it. Sometimes simple works really well. Don't feel like you need to have a paid system for every single one of your processes. That's working for us. We also use Google Sheets to share some of our owner reports. That works really well. So yeah, I love using free products. Our accountant uses QuickBooks. This is how we generate our monthly profit and loss statements. I did not want to pay for QuickBooks. It's kind of expensive. I think it's like $99 a month. That's another one that I told my accountant, like, maybe we don't need that. Nope, you need it. If you're running a business, you really need QuickBooks. And I actually truthfully signed up for QuickBooks myself and was trying to run it myself, and that's why I got rid of it. I was like, it's nonsense. You can't, no one can use it. Well, it turns out it's just not my forte, and I need somebody who has a little bit of accounting background to use that. That's what worked for me. I know some people are more, number savvy. If that's you, have at it, but somebody needs to be tracking everything in QuickBooks. It also makes your taxes so much easier. It's like one click to do your taxes, which I know before that was a whole lot easier or a whole lot harder. Other tools that we use or pay for, we do pay for DocuSign. That's how I send our owner contracts. That's also how I send the offer letters to the team. I do pay for ChatGPT. I pay for Canva. We do a lot of our inside the home graphics and such on Canva. And of course, Minoan. We use Minoan. We love recommending Minoan to our owners. Owners love when they feel like they have special access to something. And when you're a manager, when you're a co-host managing for an owner, they might not be so involved. They might not be up on what the latest and greatest uh, tools and systems are. And so if you can come in, if like, you got to replace a rug and you can come in telling your owner like, hey, I know exactly where we can get that rug. I've ordered this one before and I can get us a discount from the store that you love. Owners just eat that up. They love it. And so we leverage Minoan as much as we can anytime we're making updates, doing, light ads. We love to pull Minoan in and make sure that we're telling owners and really using that as something that like, we're involved in this industry and we know how to make your money go as far as possible. And we have partners in this industry who help us out. So really leveraging that goes a long way. And then for cleaning, if you haven't realized it already, a good cleaning partner makes one of the hugest differences. Last year, we switched our Phoenix homes to a company called Well and Good Professional Services. We have not looked back. Well and Good is located in 16, maybe more by now, states. They're all over, and Well and Good is focused entirely on the short-term rental turnover. And so they provide all the restock, all of the linens, and this really was a game changer for us. I mean, the reality is with cleaning, especially once you start growing, you're gonna have pain points. You're never gonna have the perfectly perfect system as much as you want it, but you can get close. And Well and Good has really gotten us close to that. It really was helpful once we started having a team that was managing a lot of that restock because we were spending way too much time, getting toilet paper to the property or, just like these little things. And even from an accounting perspective, the amount of work that an accountant has to do to reconcile all of those individual expenses, there's a lot of unseen costs there. And so if you can consolidate that to a single partner who's really helping you out, it goes a long way. So I've loved working with Well and Good. I didn't even expect how much that simplified our business. So they might be available in your area, or maybe you can just work out a similar system with a local cleaning company and work out a way to have them help you out with the restock, so that you're not running around dropping off toilet paper because I don't think that was, your dream job. So maybe there's a way to get some help with that. Uh, to communicate with our cleaning team, we do pay for Slack. That works really well for us. Our whole team has access to it. That's how we communicate with Well and Good. So we do pay for that. And then we do use Breezeway, which is a good tool. Well and Good covers the cost of Breezeway for us, so we don't pay anything for Breezeway. So that's another thing to look for in a cleaning partner is like, do they cover the cost of any software that you might need to use? Because Breezeway is a good system. It just doesn't really make sense for our business to pay for it. We love that Well and Good covers that cost for us. And then the other thing for cleaning, we do have a couple of homes located where Well and Good doesn't service. And so we use Turno in those areas. And I really do love Turno. That's how I got started. And for a new host, who's starting to try and scale, a new co-host trying to scale a little bit, I would say use Turno because you can find so many cleaners. If you lose a cleaner, you can find another one pretty easily. And it really does make paying your cleaner so much simpler and scheduling cleaning so much easier. So if you're doing anything manual right now to schedule your cleanings or pay your cleaner, I would challenge you to try and find a better system because that's just one thing that you can automate. And more than automating it, you will save yourself on mistakes. I have double paid cleaners. I have not paid cleaners. I don't recommend either one. Really important that you're paying your cleaner and keeping them motivated and invested. Also, you don't want to be double paying your cleaner and having an owner say, why is our cleaning expense so high? It's not a great look. And so if you can have a system automate this for you, goes a long way. And, of course, this is one of the most important pieces of our business. Nice if you can rely on a system to do that for you. All right, and my very last step here before I take some questions is reiterate and improve. So double down on what's working and get rid of what's not. I think, this is so important. And I think this can be really hard to do if you're trying to do it all alone. And so even if you are a one woman show right now or a one man show, whatever it is, see if there's other people in your business that you can ask for insight. Like, even if it's a cleaner, ask them, like, what's working really well and what's hard. Get some insight on this because it's hard to see the forest through the trees. And sometimes, the biggest issue in your business is invisible to you. That's happened to me many times that it's like, 1 year later, I'm the last to know about something that should have been pretty obvious, but you just don't know what you don't know. And so get very curious about that, get help to see it. I really like this idea of the 80-20 rule. So this idea that 20% of your earnings comes from, or wait, what am I? So 20% of your earnings comes, what I'm having a hard time saying it now, but I think you could probably finish my sentence better for me. 80% of your earnings come from 20% of your effort. 20% of your effort comes from you know what I mean. So the idea is that you're spending 20% of your time making most of your money. And the other 80% of your time, you're just kind of scrambling, just making pennies. And so, find those pockets in your business where you're really making money, where you're really profitable. Like, find the types of homes that are just really working for you, the types of owners who you really love working with, and double down on that. Don't try and get caught up making something work that just isn't going to work. And so double down on what's working, get rid of the most, get rid of the rest, get really clear and keep getting clear on who your ideal client is. Get clear on what your niche is. So our niche is, and Devin, I was going to say this before I knew you were on the call, but our niche is high maintenance owners. We love working with high maintenance owners. And the reason is these are owners who care about their home. And so I know what it's like to work with owners who don't care about their home, who just want a cash cow that they're not thinking about. And what's so frustrating about this is when you have something that you need to fix or improve, it can be really hard to get a hold of that owner or get them to agree to make some of the improvements that are really important to make. If you're working with owners who care, this is so easy. It's not even a part of your business that you have to worry about. Before it's even becoming a problem, the thing is fixed, traded out, swapped out, whatever it is. We love that. We also just like working with owners who we know are going to be responsive, and who really care. That's important to us. That doesn't need to be for everybody, but that's something that did start to get pretty clear to me, that we work really well with those owners that want that higher touch, because that's something that the larger property managers just aren't able to do. In fact, I think this got clear to me when I had two back-to-back clients come to me who had been previous Vacasa clients. I almost wasn't going to say it, but we all know Vacasa. And I think Vacasa can do great. Sure, I'm not saying every Vacasa client is unhappy, but these two owners specifically wanted a manager that they felt was more local and more hands-on. And so they left Vacasa and decided to go with us. And that's when I was like, we work really well with owners who just want higher touch. So one method that's worked for us is we have a WhatsApp group with our whole team, with each of our owners. Some of our owners are really active in the WhatsApp group. Some of our owners are not, but it gives us a place where we can ask questions, where the owner can ask questions, and where we just have an open communication where whatever needs to be said can be said. And that's working well for us. So yep, keep adding to your listing descriptions, adapt those. These are living documents. Just because you go in and create it once doesn't mean it's one and done. Keep adapting these. Just before our webinar, here, when I was preparing this, I went in and made some edits to our job descriptions just to get even clearer about that for myself and the team. Review your P&L every single month. And if you don't have a P&L yet, if you don't have a profit and loss statement that you're looking at, start asking around to figure out how you can do this. I cannot stress this one enough. It's just so important to be so clear about the money that you're making and be comparing that month to month, year to year. You need to know what you're making and what you're spending and what your profit is. And then last, be so discerning in the new systems that you add. You want to stay lean. This is an industry that will make you think you need 100 different softwares to be successful. And after trying a bunch of them, I've learned that while you do need some of them, you don't need all of them. So choose wisely and protect your profit and cancel the subscriptions that you're not using. All right, I know we almost went up to time, but let's answer some questions. Taylor, do you want to help me sort through the ones?
Yeah, definitely. I think someone was asking, a lot of people are asking how you're tracking your inventory, like consumable goods and stuff like that. I know you kind of touched on that a little bit, but maybe just review that.
Perfect. And I will leave this up to keep in touch. Scan that QR code if you want to share your email address. I will get you your a follow-up email with the slides and some of the tools that I use. Okay, so for inventory tracking. So honestly, because we use Well and Good and they provide a lot of the restock, that took a lot of that off of our plate. And then we do a little bit of that in Monday.com. So we'll use some of our inventory tracking there. And then at the end of the month, that's one of the things that I'm looking at very, very closely. I'm looking at each property and each expense. And, just last month, I was like, why did we buy 2 rounds of laundry detergent for this property? Turns out the cleaner let us know twice that we needed it. So we bought it twice. I'm asking my team, like, are both laundry detergents at the house? And so each month, I'm just going with a fine tooth comb through each of those expenses and then relying on our cleaning team to do that for us. I've tried like more granular ways of inventory tracking, and I just think it's one of those things that you can really spin your wheels on that really, might not be worth the time if you can find partners who are helping you manage that. And so one thing with Well and Good is you pay a flat fee every month for the restock. So it is more predictable, which I really like.
Cool, perfect. Peter asked, where did you find employees to help scale? Like, how did you find your amazing team? I know you mentioned one of them is your mom, so that's an obvious one, but
It was easy.
everyone else.
Yeah. So Kylie, I met through my network. And so that was somebody through my network where somebody was like, I was complaining a lot about how burnt out I was and how much I needed help. And somebody was like, I've got the perfect person for you. She's got experience in short-term rentals. And we had a phone call and that worked out. And then also through staffing agencies, I would be careful with staffing agencies because they do charge a premium. So you'll pay more than what you pay for the employee, but it's a good way to get started. And what ended up happening is I found somebody through one of those agencies, and then it worked out for us to work together one-on-one. So now we work directly. I don't go through the staffing agency, but that was a good way to get started. So once again, leveraging your network the same way that you find owners, letting people on Instagram know that you're looking for this. Go showing up at these meetups saying that you're looking for this position, having a really clear job description so that when that person comes, you've got something that says this is what I need. And then yeah, if nothing else, staffing agencies, but just do be careful, but that is a good place to get started.
Perfect. And we'll just do one more question here, because I know we're at time. By the way, everyone who's still on here, we will be sending out this recording and more info on how you can get in touch with Brittany too. But so last question, who do you use for your locks? Like how are you generating those codes and all of that?
Yep. So we use the Slag. I think that's how you say it. I always used to say Slosh, but Slag. I love it. I have tried Quickset. I do not like Quickset. I've used August and Yell locks. They're fine, but I love Slag the best. They link to Hospitable, and so Hospitable does automatically set and remove codes for every single guest. Yeah, I love it. I know looking back there, that's one of the requirements for new owners is I ask that they have that Slag lock. That's a requirement in order for us to manage their home.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brittany. I know we're at time here, but like I said, we will be reaching out with all of this info. You guys will be able to watch the recording. You know how you can obviously scan this QR code to get in touch with Brittany, and we'll give you another way as well. But thank you so much, Brittany. This has been great. So much useful info. Anyone whose questions we didn't get to, like I said, we'll be giving you a way to reach out to Brittany, and she's the easiest to talk to. So,
Absolutely. Would love to keep in touch. Well, thank you so much. This was a ton of fun. Thank you for all the
yeah.
questions. And yeah, would love to keep in touch.
We're gonna have some pro co-hosters coming our way. Awesome. Thanks, Brendy.
Bye.
Bye.